technology replace interpreters? And this panel will be moderated by Barry Olson. And the members of the panels are Kim Ludvigsen, Naomi Baumann, Lakshman Rathnam, and Mingbo Ma. And I'm not saying more about them because they will have the opportunity to introduce themselves at the beginning of the panel. Just one thought, I don't want to read out the synopsis, but listening to Belin's presentation and thinking of this panel that has this question that's been asked by mankind ever since the first machine was introduced in production somewhere. I couldn't help but think of the very first presentation of this day by Zalán Medgyessy about the technological approach to applying the original speaker's intonation and style to what the interpreter was saying. So it's some kind of, I have some neural networks in front of my inner eye that does a deep fake of the voice of the original actor, but I may be taking this too far, so I'm handing over the floor to Barry and the members of this panel. Thank you very much.
Wonderful, Balázs. Thank you so much for that introduction. And we want to say welcome to all of our panelists. Feel free to go ahead and turn on your video. Kim, Mingbo, and let's see, Lakshman and Naomi are already there with us. So we will not be using any slides. You're going to look at a few talking heads for the next hour. And I hope we are going to instill in you a curiosity about AI and what it can do currently for interpreting and for spoken communication across languages, and what it might do in the future. But before we get down to business, I wanted to just express that this is part of the Think Interpreting track at Gala. And I've had the opportunity to listen in on a number of other presentations on day 1 and day 2 of the conference. And we heard from David Canuck and Chris Wendt, where they were talking about how do you connect AI with localization solutions that were largely written, but there was also speech to text and a number of other technologies that do have an overlap with interpreting. Istvan Lengel also talked about integration and middleware and how that is helping streamline spoken communication across languages. Hélène Pielmeyer talked about the relationship of the human element, right, with what the future of the supply chain will be for language service companies with interpreters and translators. We've seen large amounts of grant money going to machine interpreting programs. In fact, the EU published a complete list of awardees for an automatic speech translation contract that was in the millions of dollars. To be able to provide live speech to text and machine translation in 24 languages, right? And that's just one example. There are other papers being published all the time from many of the big players in this space. One that we have recognized or represented today in the person of Mingbo Ma, who is joining us from Baidu Research. And they are continuing to work on different specific areas and moving this technology forward. So keeping all of those things in mind, there's a lot of movement in this space. But at the same time, you also hear from people in the space, oh no, this won't work, no, this isn't good enough. And so where's the truth? Where do things actually stand? And we're going to try and delve into that a little bit today from the point of view of companies that are trying to figure out how do we continue to facilitate multilingual communication as technologies evolve and change. So having said that, let me quickly introduce our panel. And I am thrilled to have all of these people on one video screen. It's a big deal. And I'm almost desirous to take like a family photo so that 10 years from now we can look back on this and say, yep, I was there. Let me first introduce Naomi Baumann. Naomi is the president of DS Interpretation. DS Interpretation is a company that has been a pioneer in the development of technology for simultaneous interpretation since the early 70s. And so having her here is a privilege. Naomi is also a company, her company represents those who are trying to find solutions to meet client needs. Now, next, I want to introduce Kim Ludvigsen. Kim is the founder and CEO of Interprify. I met Kim back in 2015 in Berlin, when Interprify was still a thought in his mind, and he was very keen to share it and get people's ideas about it. And it's been wonderful to see how that company has grown and is currently thriving in the current COVID situation. So Kim is an entrepreneur and someone who always has his eye on future technologies. Next, we have Mingbo Ma. Mingbo is a staff research scientist at Baidu Research Institute, and he works on a lot of different topics that have to do with natural language processing and also speech. I've got to get this right, not speech-to-speech translation. The term that gets used is automatic, help me out here, Mingbo. I'm blanking on what we called it at the conference in July.
Okay, it's basically combined with three-step pipelines, which is automatic speech recognition, which is short for ASR. And we have kind of rely on the text-based machine translation system to translate in one language to another. And then we have to some kind of the users or the audience end, which is called speech synthesis, to speak out translation to the audience.
So basically speech-to-speech translation. Thank you, Mingbo, for that. And finally, and last but of course not least, Lakshman Rathnam, who is with us. Lakshman is the founder and the CEO of Wordly.ai. And he has worked in engineering and is a technologist and worked in product management for many years. And he saw what AI could do and jumped into the language space, and is an entrepreneur that is currently working with a solution to be able to provide speech-to-speech translation in multiple languages. And so when you put all of this together, we pretty well cover the spectrum of folks that are interested in this topic. So thanks to all of you for being with us. And I'm going to go ahead, having framed our discussion just a little bit, what I would like to do is start out with some initial questions, and I'm going to put one to Mingbo here first, and that is, what is the most promising area of development right now in simultaneous translation or speech-to-text translation? Where do you see the most movement, Mingbo?
Okay, thank you for the nice introduction from Barry. And currently Baidu have working on multiple different directions of this kind of new technology. And our slogan for the company is basically trying to bring the technology in the easiest way or the most easy to access the way to all the people. So currently we have different some kind of directions of our current technologies. So one is the most important one is go to this kind of travelers. For example, as you might already know that the human interpreters are sometimes very costly and not very be used for a lot of people. And of course, you have to make appointment or something like that if you want to travel to a different country. But our technology is going to rely on some kind of very small device. So we have this kind of device many years ago, and which is trying to translate the language between Chinese and Japanese, Chinese to Korean, Chinese to Italian language. So basically, as you can notice, that is most about East Asian, this kind of country. And because we have huge amount of travelers between these three countries, between China, then with this kind of technology that people is very easy to communicate with the people, the locals. For example, if you go outside for the order some kind of food, and it can make it easier to order the food or to communicate with the waiters. And sometimes you want to find a way to go to different locations, something like that. So for my point of view, this is our most promising areas of our technologies that can be used. Because, for example, my mom do not want to learn or have very hard time to learn foreign language, especially is not, so for Chinese, I think you still can recognize some kind of Japanese characters, but when they speak, you have no idea what they're talking about. So then you have to rely on kind of very easy to use device and very portable device, and to communicate with other people who speak foreign languages. This is one major direction we used to have. Actually, we started about 3 years ago. That kind of translation technology is still based on the conventional, this kind of, what do you call it, as a concatenated translation or consecutive translation. Basically, it's the one people finish to speak and one people is talking to the device, and after people finish, device gonna translate or speak out a translation to the people, to foreigners or people who speak different languages. And we recently updated this kind of technology into a different level, which actually this product had been just released last week. Basically, something like an AirPod, which we call it Xiaodu Pod. So basically, you have a set of headphones, just like AirPods. And you basically, what you do is, instead of talking to a device where you need to hold it, and we basically need to just connect the headphones to the smartphone. And then we hand over one or left or right one to the different speaker. And then we can talk through the headphones. And the headphones going to, give the signals or the source speech to the smartphone, and smartphone going to translate into different pair of or different set of headphones.
Great. So just to quickly sum that up, what you're seeing is that one of the most promising areas is for back and forth, short, informal interpretation between people who don't speak the same language. Excellent. Well, Lakshman, let me bring it over to you and just ask you, as someone who's an experienced entrepreneur and a product manager, you decided to go into this, build a company, and move forward. So I'm very curious to hear from you. What motivated you to build a speech-to-speech translation company?
Barry, thank you very much. First of all, let me thank you very much for inviting me to this panel. It's very exciting. And I want to thank the whole Gala organization for putting this panel or this forum together during this COVID situation. I mean, this pandemic, it's really good to participate in social, although it's a distance activity, it's still social, and having a forum like this is great. So I really, really commend the organization team in putting this together. Let me address your question. What triggered me to start a company and build a company that's building a translation platform? So I started about 3 years ago, where I saw pieces of the puzzle, although at that time it was a little bit scrambled, where AI and machine learning progression had at asymptotic levels. And the progress year over year was just incremental, not exponential. And at the same time, cloud computing, AWS and cloud computing was ubiquitous. And the third factor was that people were getting used to interacting with speech interactive devices like Alexa, Siri, and Google Home. So voice interactive devices where people were adapting to those kind of devices. Now, if you put these three pieces of the puzzle together, you can say, look, now speech to speech is ready. People are willing to interact with machines in speech. Their expectations are kind of set, and the technology is available. So it only seemed natural to see the vision at that time of having the beginnings of what I call the universal translator. So just to introduce everybody to Wordly, we are building an AI-based, AI-powered cloud platform that does simultaneous translation across multiple languages, and our focus is on enterprise productivity and inclusivity.
Excellent, great, thank you so much. And so I'm going to bring it over to Kim. Kim and I actually talked about doing this panel and addressing the whole idea of AI. And so Kim, we've got a market right now where RSI is definitely booming, right? Finally, for many years, we were watching how the technology was there, but for whatever reason, it was only moving incrementally. Because of what's happened with COVID, we do see that RSI has really taken off, because it is, in many cases, not only the best option, but there really aren't that many other options to be able to hold multilingual meetings online. And so as we go through all of this growth and we see what's happening, with this way of communicating. We have AI as well. And I'm interested to hear your thoughts on how AI is working and just what you see.
Yes, thank you, Barry. And as you said, I think RSI, which is being used a lot now, has changed. If we talk about conference interpreting, more in 6 months than any other technology in the last 50 years. The market has really changed, and I think RI or machine interpreting will come sooner or later. The question is only when. We know that computers get better and better, and at one stage they will surpass our brains. And I think interpreting will be in the future something that machines will do to the extent that you can't tell the difference between a human interpreter and the machine. But when will it happen? 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, or somebody still say never? I think it will happen one day, but it will be down the future. And your question, how does it work? Well, we heard it before. There are actually 3 steps. There is the speech recognition, which is actually the toughest one to get a proper speech for the machine to understand. And then once the machine has the text, then the text is translated, and then a speech generator puts it back into speech. So speech to speech translation. And there's actually a very interesting book on this topic. I can just show you. Okay, it's this one. It's by an interpreter called Jonathan Downey. Some of you might know him. Is quite.
Yes, read the book. No,
you read the book also, yeah. Mm-hmm. Interpreters versus machines. Can interpreters survive in an AI-dominated world? So he speaks about artificial intelligence and how it will change the profession. And I think we should look carefully at this, and we should also, I think we can learn a lot from how the translation profession changed. I think there are parallels if we go back 20 years, how the first, or even longer, 25 years, how the first CAT tools changed the translation industry. And the same thing is going to happen in the interpreting world, and probably much faster.
Yeah, I would say not only is it going to happen, it's been happening at breakneck speed for the last 4 months, for sure. So thanks for that, Kim. And Naomi, I want to turn to you now as we finish up this first round of questions, because you are the person that is where the rubber hits the road. You're the one that brings together solutions to be able to meet clients' needs when it comes to anything multilingual, be it a conference, be it, translation, et cetera. So as you have seen AI come on board, and I know you and I have had lots of discussions about this, and you've actually used some AI tools to solve some of the challenges that clients have had. So from your perspective, as someone who has to find the solutions and help a client meet their goals with the existing technology, what kind of things come into your head? What are your criteria to be able to decide, yeah, I think this is something we can use?
Well, your original question.
Go with that. Forgive me. I riffed. Let's go with the original, but go ahead.
I'm going to combine some things. So why is my company interested in all these new technologies? Do we have a business case for new technologies? We are an almost 50-year-old conference interpreting company. But here's the reality. We focus on these new technologies and are very interested in AI in particular because we are a business that serves the market. And this is the key point. I've heard a lot of things, especially from the interpreting world, about technology companies and new technology companies kind of driving this market and presenting solutions. In one case, I heard from a group of people providing a solution for a problem that doesn't exist. And I want to make it clear that companies exist because of market needs. In some cases, because of market opportunities. We have to respond to a dynamic and demanding market. And if the market wants and expects new technology to help improve their operations, we as a company will deliver. We will respond, we will adapt, and we will deliver. So in particular, let's talk about a little bit of AI, Wordly. I have used Wordly as a solution for one of our clients, one of our oldest clients. We're a company that's been around. We have a lot of loyal clients. This is a client that goes back to 1984. We have worked with them every year since 1984. They wanted a new technology solution. They wanted to try AI. And so we did. It was an appropriate use case scenario. I felt that it would be a successful scenario, and that was the only reason I was willing to go down this path. They met the criteria that I felt was necessary to be successful with this solution. And it was a pretty fascinating experiment. What did they think? Well, they liked it well enough to say that they wanted to use it from now on. Now why? Why would they choose that over human interpreters? Why? In this case, yes, technology is replacing human interpreters at a very high level event. The reason is because this group could not pay the increasing costs, incredibly high costs of using human interpreters. So for this event, their option, they simply did not have the budget. Their option was to try AI or not have interpreting. And so they chose AI. And it was very successful. Was it a replacement? In some ways, yes. In some ways, no. These are people who have some language skills. They're looking at this as a tool, as a supplement. If they had not had any linguistic skills whatsoever in the other language, I would not have recommended it. So that's just to give you an example. The other reason I just want to say, why is a company like mine interested in all of this? Because it's thrilling and it's exciting. I need to bring that up. There's a lot of negative talk about it. I don't feel negatively about it at all. I view it as a wonderful tool of opportunity to help us serve our client needs. What we're trying to do, what our vision is to make technology work for us and work for our clients. It's a tool. It's a tool for humans to communicate. And our goal is to use these tools and these technologies appropriately. And by golly, we can do it.
Yeah.
It's up to responsible companies to implement technology responsibly and appropriately. But these technologies exist because the market wants these technologies. The market needs these technologies.
Well, fair enough. And sorry, didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
I look forward to the future to see what's next. And I also want to just add one point. These technologies don't come out of thin air. They build on each other. So when something is successful in the market, that takes hold and then it's improved and improved. And technologies that aren't successful and don't meet client needs are going to disappear. Right now, RSI is incredibly successful. Why? Because it's the only way that we can have conferences. Okay, so that's it.
Awesome, thank you. So that concludes the first round. And what I would like to do is do just a bit of a straw poll. And I'd like those of you who are attending and watching, just quick yes or no question in the chat. And you can send that to everyone, all panelists and attendees if you'd like, or just to panelists. Do you see any possible business cases in your business, in your world, where AI could be used and speech-to-speech translation could be leveraged? Just say, it's a simple question, yes, no. I'm interested to see what we can come up with. So quick straw poll, just right there in the chat. You can type yes, no. Okay, yes, yes, yes. I hope we have some more. Yes, yes, yes. I hope so. There's some hope in there. Yes, 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 yes. So we'll let those keep coming in. But as we begin this second phase, what I do want to encourage people who are connected and watching, put your questions in the chat now. We'll start to take a look at them, and we can actually pose these to our panelists throughout the remaining about 30 minutes that we have, in addition to some of the other questions that I've thought up. So I would like to talk use cases here, okay? Mingbo has mentioned one, and I think it's probably the most common one, where you have an app, you're able to engage in informal conversation when, frankly, it would be next to impossible or just prohibitively expensive or logistically prohibitive to have a professional interpreter interposed into that conversation. But what else is out there? What do you see, right? And that's what I'd like to ask our panelists, if anyone wants to dive in and maybe answer that a little bit. And I'm seeing Lakshman leaning forward a little bit, so I'm thinking maybe he has a thought.
Yeah, so thanks. I mean, this is a perfect. So you know, there are quite a few players in the tourism and the consumer category. So you know, Mingbo has mentioned that there are quite a few players out there. But one of the key areas that I believe, and what we are seeing, especially in the market today, is that there are so many situations where interpreters are just not available. And I'll give you, I mean, business use cases are very predominant and obvious, but I'll give you some outliers here. Just so that you get people get accustomed to the different use cases. There are a few churches within the US, surprisingly, that do sermons in multiple languages. And now that they're not able to do it in person, they're just able to use solutions, AI-based solutions, and do virtual sermons in multiple languages at the same time. Now, I also want to caveat a little bit here is that AI, I believe, is really relevant for informational transfer today. And when you look at conversations, it can be broken down into two different components, like the information component and the emotional component. And if you want to transfer information today, AI is good. And that's sufficient. AI-based solutions are sufficient and capable of doing that. Whereas I see that emotional part is still yet to come. And I agree with Kim that it'll come at some time soon. And I don't know when that is. I agree with him about this, the timing is, is fluid, but I think it'll be there.
So Lakshman, thanks for that. And I'm going to use my moderator privilege here for just a moment, because one of the things that I've seen in a number of presentations throughout Gala Connected this week is that a number of people talking about AI. If we go back to Zalan's presentation that he had this morning when he kicked things off in session 11, and he was talking about, well, we took a different approach to try to figure out how we can get the emotional content into a synthesized voice or a presentation of content. That is still after that presentation, it's fascinating. They're not there yet. I still see it as very Star Trek-y. But one thing that has been reiterated, even in Belen's presentation before our panel, she noted that it's where is the focus for the human talent? It's on the emotion. It's on the connection. It's all about those things that make us quintessentially human. I have a bit of a different approach to what can actually be done for that and how soon that's going to happen. And I think it's fine for us to disagree on some of those things. But that human element is the one thing that seems to be lacking in these solutions. And when it's information transfer, it's great. But if you have to have some kind of emotion to get across, or listening to a synthesized voice as it currently stands, say for 3 hours straight, I think there are still going to be some pretty significant resistance in addition to some of the other things that are there. So, you know, that's one of the hurdles that I see for adoption in some contexts, but I'm curious to hear from others. Do you think there are other hurdles that are keeping this technology from being adopted now? Not that it's necessarily a flaw in the technology, but a hurdle to having it adopted.
I'd like to jump in really quick, Barry, on that. I think the synthesized, I think the voice changes are, I mean, I've been looking at technology, and I believe that that will change soon. The robotic voices will change very, very soon. That's coming. But one of the biggest hurdles today for AI-based interpretation, I believe, is just general awareness of people knowing that there are solutions that exist that can do what they want. To me, that is the biggest hurdle today.
Mm-hmm. Any other thoughts on hurdles? And I would say, with what Lakshman just said here, you heard it here first. We'll see what happens. Any other panelists want to jump in on the hurdles?
I'd like to comment on the emotional component because I think it is so important. One of the ways that we are working with our clients in the remote setting right now is to ensure that the original emotional content and feeling from the source is the primary thing that is received by the listeners. And I think that's very important to bring up. Yes, conference and simultaneous interpreters convey that human element and that emotion, and they do it very well. And it is a unique skill that they bring to the table. But in what I'm finding is in this remote environment, what's even more important than the interpreter conveying this is making sure that the listeners have access to the emotion that comes from the original source. And this is one of the hurdles with RSI. If somebody is listening and only has a language channel that is the interpreter, they're relying on that interpreter to convey 100% of the emotion from the original source. And that is difficult to do because there are other factors involved, such as background music or other things that come through in a live setting that don't come through in a remote setting. So I wanted to bring that up, that emotional component is so important, but it also comes from the original source.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that, Naomi. And I think that this is where we can see just how complex human communication is, spoken communication. And we're learning about this as we move along and as RSI continues to expand and to be used a great deal to keep business continuity for so many organizations. Now, I'll shift my question unless anyone else wanted to jump in on that issue of the hurdles.
Oh, yeah. Line comments of the hurdles.
Yes. Yeah, go ahead, Mingbo.
Yes, I think the most important thing is make the technology more human-like, right? Trying to preserve the source emotions to the target as well. And especially there is one technology called expressive TTS. It has been there for years, and this is our future goals. and which is just trying to preserve the source speaker's emotions into target language. The intuitive speaking, the technology is just trying to keep the original speaker's prosody, like fundamental frequency in technology point of view, and also the pulse, something like this kind of information, trying to translate, not only translate the text informations, but also translate the emotions as a different language, you can say, like treat like this way to a target language as well.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is our current, maybe the future goals of the current technology or next level, trying to make technology more human-like. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So thank you for that. And this is one thing that I am seeing a lot of research on. Yeah, Kim, go ahead.
Yes, I think instead of talking about the hurdles, I think it's more interesting to talk about the potential, and also one sort of a fundamental thing. I think we should also distinguish between consecutive interpreting, which is like the biggest part of the market, and simultaneous or conference interpreting, and some of these apps that like Mingbo spoke about, what he's developing is he's actually serving a market which there was no solution previously. He said there are no interpreters. It's a completely new market he's building up. And I think it's also, when we talk about the potential, Naomi mentioned, it's very important to look at what clients want. And it's not always what we think they want is what they want. So it's very important to really listen to the clients and also what they're willing to pay for. And I think a lot of these new technologies, and in particular artificial intelligence, will make this service so much less expensive that the market will explode. I mean, we've seen this in translation. A lot of people thought that the coming of CAT tools that was sort of make translators unemployed. On the contrary, there's more translation, more work for the translators than ever, but it's different. And the volume worldwide of documents being translated has, I don't know, 1,000-folded or something like that. So I think we can expect something similar in the translation industry, and it's already happening. RSI is a lot of small organizations, they could just not afford it. It was too expensive, and now they use it. And when we get artificial intelligence to interpret, you can basically have any meeting or conference just automatic being interpreted.
Yeah.
Because there are hardly any, or there are no variable costs. It's all fixed costs.
I agree. I believe that, and Kim, that you hit the nail on the head today. I believe, it's a green field out there, and I believe only 15% of the market that needs interpretation is serviced by humans. I just think there's just so much out there that people just don't use interpretation just because it's just hard to get.
I can. I'm going to just interpose here quickly and say, where did you get that number? Is that from a source somewhere? Is that a guesstimation on your part, Lakshman?
No, that's just data that we have collected and seen what people have used and what they don't use and whether they'd like to use. It's our own market survey.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, super. Thank you. We do have a comment that came in from Ellen Pilmer from CSA Research. She said, I'm working on a report on RSI platforms right now as an analyst at CSA Research. And out of the 18 RSI providers that participated in the study, 6 already reported having built-in machine captioning or subtitling, right? So this is not a future thing. This is happening right now. So Naomi, I'll turn it over to you. You had a comment.
Yes, I did have a comment. To me, new technology is about creating access to language services. And the market is demanding this access. It's connecting people, it's connecting businesses, and technology is creating markets where they didn't previously exist. Interpreters, conference interpreters, my world, conference interpreters are incredibly expensive. I cannot afford to hire conference interpreters for a small, very small meeting that I may want to have privately. New technology allows me to communicate on that level in a different way. This, to me, technology isn't about replacing interpreters, conference interpreters in particular. It's about creating language access and working with technology to create new opportunities and do things more efficiently and use these tools. So access.
Great observation. And I'm going to, Marta Balash has asked a question.
May I just quote Naomi's dad? I always use this, that, Naomi, do you want me to say what your dad said? Or you say it yourself? I think it's such a fantastic quote.
Yes, I was reading Jonathan Downey's book today, actually, and stumbled on page 140. There was my father, Bill Wood. Interpreters will not be replaced by technology. Interpreters will be replaced. See there, I messed it up. That's pretty funny. Interpreters will be replaced by technology. They'll be replaced by interpreters who use technology.
Yeah. You know, just as a side note, Naomi, one of the things that brings me the greatest satisfaction in the decade that I was working with Catherine Allen on Interpret America and putting those conferences together, I still remember the panel discussion when your dad said that.
Yes.
Really?
And it was,
yeah.
it was
I think there's a
amazing.
video.
There
a
is
video out there. Yeah.
There is.
That's
it's like
what,
back, was it the 80s or something?
It was, no, the conference was in 2011.
yes. And that's
2011.
humbled because my father, who passed away last year, I had the vision of him saying that, and I can remember exactly what he was doing, and he raised his hand like that. So
no, it was an amazing thing, and I think it really got people thinking, and it's traveled the world more than once. So very glad to have that quote there. So Marta, we're going to get to your question, but before we do, I do want to shift because we've touched on something, but not directly, and I think we need to, and it's how do we manage client expectations? Because in the typical technology press, in the mainstream press, whenever anything is written about these technologies, speech-to-speech translation, AI, it is written in such a way to make people think that, oh, this technology has solved all of our problems. You know, I can't tell you how many interpreters walk up to me and say, if I had a dime for every time someone come up to me and said, oh, do you still have a job? Right? And so when we talk about client education, we also have this issue of managing expectations, which is going to be very important as we move forward and as this expands out. How do we manage those expectations and at the same time inform them correctly about what the technology can and can't do?
Well, I think it's just listen to the interpreters. Also listen to the interpreters, of course.
Of course.
They're being very helpful in developing this technology. But I would say more important, you know, who's paying? That's the client, and you know who. The one who pays commands, and we have discussed this. It's what client wants, and you know, do they really want top quality? You know, everybody says, oh, we only deliver only the best quality. Do clients always want that? And again, we have to listen to the clients and see what they see what they demand and offer it.
Mm-hmm. So it's listening to the client, certainly, but if the client has an expectation that goes far beyond what the service, and I'm not even talking about technology per se, the service we're providing is there. I mean, we have to learn how to set that correctly. And with AI, it's difficult.
I want to add that I view my company's primary role right now as providing client education and setting expectations. That's our job. And it's a big one, and it's never ending.
Lakshman, go ahead.
Yeah, so sorry, Naomi, I didn't mean to interrupt, but one of the things that we really, and I believe Kim, I know Kim and Mingbo both mentioned this earlier as well. It's the AI-based translation is as good as the input. So so we try to educate our clients that the speakers need to speak clearly, and that's what, if the speech is good, the quality of input is good, the output is good.
Sounds familiar.
Right? I mean, but people get used to it. That's how, how many times have I screwed up in front of Alexa? And then I changed my way that I talk to Alexa. So this is a part of the education that companies like mine and, everybody on this panel and the industry at some time has to focus on, is to say, let's embrace this technology, but there's also some education towards this in the way that, hey, I need to speak properly, clearly. And the one way to enable this is to have everybody speak in their native tongue, because then they are speaking really clearly, they're speaking their mind, and they speak, correct grammar, and that gets translated.
Mm-hmm. It's a great thought. Mingbo, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
Oh, yes. So as I remember, 20 years ago, I started using the IBM technology for the speech recognition, and which is building the ThinkPad machine. Yeah, that was some kind of in high school at that time. I remember at the very beginning, we want to tune the machine, and they ask you to read some kind of articles, which have, I think I have to read about 10 minutes. Then this entire system got to fine tune on my this kind of accent. As you know, in China, we have a lot of dialects there. And so gradually, I think the machine can understand me better after this 10 minutes reading. Then probably this kind of one way to go, I mean, for some kind of very important meetings or something like that, to fine tune the speaker's accents. And, yeah.
Great. We've had some audience questions come in, and I want to get to those now. So let's get to Marta Balaj's question. She said, when will machine interpretation be available for small languages like some European ones? I think she's referring to the long tail languages that maybe don't have a lot of data, and their reach is not that of, say, English or Spanish or French, and those languages that have traditionally been used in multilingual settings.
Yeah, I think I can answer this question for now. So for the conventional translation, like not simultaneous translation, actually this kind of thing is already being very hot topic right now. And what we call it is low resource translation training, or something like unsupervised machine translation. So basically, like, so currently in our conventional machine translation system, we rely on the training pairs, which is the source sentence and target sentence talking about exactly the same thing. And this kind of annotations generated by human annotators or translators. But currently for this kind of low resource languages, what we're doing is we're trying to first pre-train our system on the monolingual corpus in the first place, and only rely on very small amount of the training pairs, like 1,000, this kind of training pairs, and we're going to fine tune on these pairs and get better results now. So as you might notice that this kind of technology is still in the very some kind of initial steps to try to explore this kind of areas, but I think it's going to used in the simultaneous translation system as well. Yeah.
Okay, great. Mingbo,
Yeah.
thanks for that.
Can I add a comment to that?
Sure, Lakshman, go ahead.
So our experience is that from a target language, these are easier to be implemented, but not so much as a source language, because the speech recognition for these long tail languages is much harder an exercise.
Oh yeah, there is also kind of unsupervised speech recognition. This kind of technology has been going on right now in recent years. I think we will be addressed part of the issue in the very easy tasks, I think.
Yeah.
Great, thanks for those comments. Let's move on to the next question. I think it's coming from Ginny Bromberg. And She said, we've been discussing the topic in terms of spoken language application, but what about the various sign languages? There are lots of challenges and opportunities there as well with sign language. I'll look to Lakshman and I think Mingbo on that. If you've got anything to add. I know that in RSI, that's also a very big deal, that having not only spoken but signed language access is really important for a lot of clients. But how are things there? What's the state of the research?
Yeah, so let me start by saying that before I segued into the genesis of Wordly was to work with the hearing impaired, and I actually was part of a hearing aid company, and then I wanted to provide speech-to-text technology for the hearing impaired. And one of the questions that did come up at that time when I was doing customer research was, hey, it's good for us to hear you, but what are you doing to hear us? So the challenge, I mean, the question that that is posed here is an excellent question. It just, the technology, I know that there is some research going on here where there are sensors put into human hands where they do the gestures, and that's being converted into sign language. Although I believe it's being done only for ASL right now. My research on this may be a little bit dated because my focus has shifted, but I don't know much more about it.
Mm-hmm. Anything to add, Mingbo?
Oh, yes. So I think this is a pretty good question. And I did not see any commercial usage for now. Probably some people else in this panel see this kind of technology for commercial use as already. But I have seen a lot of papers have been published in this area. Actually, a few of my colleagues before when I'm back to New York is working on this kind of thing for the people who have problem with speaking or hearing, this kind of issues. And this is kind of a joint research area between computer vision and natural language processing. Not only you trying to interpret the sign language into the target or text-based language, but also in another way around, we're trying to generate the sign language in the video, this kind of image-based or video-based from a source text language. Yeah, I think there's a lot of people who is work on the research on these directions. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thanks, Mingbo. We got one more question from our audience, actually from our partner in Interpret America, Catherine Allen, has a question specifically for Naomi. It's going back to where we were talking about managing client expectations. What do you find to be the best strategies, the most effective strategies to manage those expectations appropriately?
That's a wonderful question. Time. You have to take the time to make a personal connection with your client, even in a remote setting, face-to-face, like we are conducting this meeting on Zoom is a great way. You have to take the time and talk them through it and show them. So a tactile and personal connection. And it takes time. It takes energy. It helps to have standards and published documents that you can share with people. But I know I'm going to get a laugh out of this comment. Most people don't read documents that you send them, especially when it comes to client guidelines to make sure that your event is successful. I will admit that I had a document to attend tonight that I was sent, and I didn't read it. It's hard to get people to read documents. It takes FaceTime, and that means a personal connection with your clients. And you have to make sure that you are fully understood. The language needs to be consistent. It needs to be concise. It needs to be clear. A technique that I have been using recently is one that's quite famous, but I attribute it to the physicist Richard Feynman. I'm a big fan. And he said, I can teach quantum physics. He was a little bit arrogant, but I love him anyway. I can teach quantum physics to a 6-year-old. How? You talk to them by breaking it down into the simplest concepts possible. And because you do that, you know your subject matter very, very well. And if you break it down into the simplest language possible, you can teach quantum physics to a 6-year-old. And it's the same with any topic or any industry. Your clients come from all different backgrounds, and interpreters too. I'm having to do a huge amount of education with interpreters entering this remote working world.
Yeah.
Break it down into simple, clear concepts that anybody can understand. The simpler, the better. And take the time to do it. That's what we have to do.
Great. I'm going to ask one question of each of you, and this is going to be kind of a speed round. And I want you just to give me one thing, not a long explanation, just one thing. What is the next big thing in speech-to-speech translation? Mingbo.
Okay, I have
Finding the mute button. There we go.
Unmute button. Yeah. So next time, I think, as I mentioned previously, we have the first step, like consecutive translation technique device already been deployed. And we have this kind of simultaneous translation have been deployed last week. And I think the next step of our company, at least, I don't know what other companies go, but from my perspective, I think our future goal is trying to make the translation more human-like, I just mentioned before, like trying to preserve the emotions and the key point from the speaker, something like that.
Okay, making it more human-like. Thank you, Mingbo. Lakshman, next big thing.
There are some advances being made in mixed mode language communication, and I think between that and speaker disambiguation for different conversation modes, I think, I mean, I'm going to put two things there, but those are the what many customers have been asking as well. So I think the customers' request will be driven more into technology implementations.
Yeah. So speaker disambiguation, recognition of different speakers. Great. Naomi, from a business perspective, what would you see? You're on mute.
Mute yourself, just like me.
Yes. This is such a tough question for somebody in my position. So I'm going to have a very vague answer. What I see coming is the appropriate application of this technology. Exactly what that looks like right now, I can't tell you because things are so dynamic, but defining the appropriate application.
Okay. Defining appropriate application for the technology. Kim, what's the next big thing in AI?
I think I want to add what Naomi said. I think something which client can use, platforms which are easy to use. Right now, it's sort of very scientific. It's not the solutions. You have these engines which are Watson or whatever they're called, Deep Blue and so on. And it's putting them into a platform which is easy to use for clients. That will make the breakthrough.
All right, super. Thank you, Kim. Well, we are at time, so I'm just going to wrap up this presentation and then turn it back over to Balazs and say it has been a pleasure, and I'm getting a little fuzzy. Hopefully I'm going to get focused here again. Sometime my camera has a problem. I'll just do this quickly. Turn that back on. We'll go with it. I guess I'm going to be a little fuzzy for the rest of the presentation. Thank you for being willing to contribute your knowledge and your expertise to this, for me, fascinating panel discussion. And as we move forward, we know what we're going to be looking for. It's about finding a way to make AI more human-like when providing speech-to-speech translation, and finding a way to make it user-friendly and appropriate for clear use cases in the language services space. Thank you so much to all of you. It's been an honor to be on this panel with you. And Balazs, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you very much. I have to be very quick because the other panelists are waiting. So I just say thank you for this exciting panel and this fantastic professionalism that I've seen improve in this industry over the last couple of decades. Thank you very much again, and have a great time for the rest of the conference.
All right. Thanks, Balazs. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.